The massive ship floated in the darkness of space like a crystal mountain. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The ship belonged to the Korvath hegemony, and they had ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. No one had ever beaten them in battle. No one had even come close. Admiral Zixatheta sat in his command chair, looking at the screens around him. His body was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like stone. He had 4 arms, and eyes that glowed purple in the dim light of the bridge. Today was going to be another easy victory. Today they would add Earth to their empire. The admiral turned to look at his officers. They were all from different worlds the Korvath had conquered. Now they served the hegemony as everyone did eventually. His tactical officer, a creature with blue scales and 6 eyes, was studying the data about Earth. "Tell me about these humans," the admiral said. His voice sounded like grinding rocks. The tactical officer touched his screen, and images appeared in the air. "They are young, Admiral. Very young. They only discovered faster-than-light travel 90 years ago. Most species take at least 500 years before they can build ships that can fight in space. These humans have only 30 ships to defend their entire world." The admiral's mouth parts moved in what his species considered a smile. 30 ships against our 300. How amusing. Another officer spoke up. "Their ships are small, Admiral. The biggest one is only 2 kilometers long. Our smallest destroyer is 5 kilometers. Our flagship, your Eternal Dominion, is 15 kilometers long." The bridge crew made sounds of laughter. It seemed impossible that these humans thought they could fight back. Every species the Korvath met tried to resist at first. They all failed in the end. "What about their weapons?" the admiral asked. "Primitive," the weapons officer replied. "They still use missiles and projectile weapons. Some basic laser systems. Nothing that can penetrate our quantum shields. Our plasma beams will cut through their ships like they are made of paper." The admiral stood up from his chair. His 4 arms spread wide as he looked at the blue and green world on the main screen. Earth. It was a beautiful planet. It would make a good addition to the hegemony. The humans would make good workers once they were properly trained. "Send the message," he ordered. The communications officer nodded and began transmitting. The message was the same one the Korvath had sent to 1,000 worlds before Earth. "Surrender peacefully, and you will be treated well. Resist, and you will be conquered anyway, but with much more suffering." They waited. The admiral expected the humans to argue, to beg for more time, maybe to try to negotiate. That's what most species did when they realized how outmatched they were. But the response that came back was different. "Admiral," the communications officer said, sounding confused. "The humans have sent a reply. It is very short." "What does it say?" "It says, 'Come and get us.'" The bridge went silent. No one had ever replied like that before. The admiral's purple eyes brightened with interest. These humans were either very brave or very stupid. "Sir," the sensor officer interrupted, "a human ship is moving from behind their moon. Just one ship." The admiral looked at the screen. The human ship was coming toward them, alone. It was 2 kilometers long, painted dark gray with white letters on the side that spelled USS Defiance. The name itself was an insult to the Korvath. On the bridge of the USS Defiance, Captain Jack Morrison stood with his hands behind his back. He was 45 years old, with short brown hair that was starting to turn gray at the sides. His blue eyes were calm as he watched the alien fleet on the main screen. 300 ships against 1. Anyone sensible would have surrendered, but Jack Morrison had never been accused of being sensible. "Lisa, what's our status?" he asked his second in command. Commander Lisa Grant was 38, with black hair tied back in a tight bun. She had been with Jack for 5 years, and she trusted him completely. "All systems are ready, Captain. The crew is at battle stations. Our special modifications are online and working perfectly." Jack nodded. The Defiance didn't look like much from the outside, but she had secrets. Humanity had spent the last 50 years studying every piece of alien technology they could find. They had learned from it, improved on it, and then created something entirely new. "Sam, how are our shields?" Jack asked. Lieutenant Sam Chen was young, only 28, but he was the smartest engineer Jack had ever met. "Gravity distortion field is at full power, Captain. They can shoot at us all day long. Their shots will just bend around us like water around a rock." The idea had been Sam's. Everyone else in the galaxy used energy shields that tried to block attacks. Sam had asked a simple question: why block when you can redirect? If you could bend space itself, weapons fire would simply go around you. "Ben, open a channel to the Corvath flagship," Jack ordered. Lieutenant Ben Taylor, the communications officer, worked his console. "Channel open, Captain." Jack stepped forward. "Corvath Admiral, this is Captain Jack Morrison of the USS Defiance. You have entered Earth space without permission. You have threatened our world. I am giving you one chance to leave peacefully." The response came quickly. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen. His purple eyes were bright with amusement. "You dare to threaten us? One ship against 300? You humans are more foolish than we thought." Jack smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "Admiral, there's something you should know about humans. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've gotten very, very good at it. We split the atom and used it as a weapon. We've turned every force of nature into a tool of war. And now we're going to show you what that means." The Admiral made a sound that might have been laughter. "Destroy them." 300 Corvath ships opened fire at once. Thousands of plasma beams, bright as small suns, streaked through space toward the Defiance. It should have been instant destruction. It should have been over in seconds. But the beams hit the space around the Defiance and simply curved away. They bent and twisted, following the warped space-time around the ship like a river flowing around a stone. The Defiance sat in the middle of the storm of fire, completely untouched. On the Corvath flagship, the Admiral stood up so fast he knocked over his chair. "What is happening? Why aren't they destroyed?" "I don't know, Admiral," the weapons officer shouted. "Our weapons are hitting something, but it's not shields. It's like space itself is protecting them." Jack watched the confusion on the alien bridge with satisfaction. "Amy, target their 3 closest ships with the railguns. Let's show them what Einstein figured out over 300 years ago." Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez had been waiting for this moment. "Targets locked. Captain, railguns charged and ready. Fire." The Defiance had no visible weapons ports. The railguns were built into the structure of the ship itself. They fired simple tungsten rods, each one about the size of a telephone pole. But these weren't ordinary projectiles. The railguns accelerated them to 90% of the speed of light. At that speed, Einstein's famous equation came into play. Mass became energy, a lot of energy. The first rod hit a Corvath cruiser dead center. The impact released more energy than a nuclear bomb. The cruiser didn't explode so much as it transformed into light and heat. One moment it was there, the next it was an expanding cloud of glowing gas. The second and third rods found their targets a fraction of a second later. 2 more Corvath ships simply ceased to exist. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion fell silent. 3 ships, each 5 kilometers long, each with crews of thousands, gone in less than a second. Destroyed by projectiles so primitive that most species had stopped using them centuries ago, Admiral Zixatheta stood frozen, his 4 arms hanging limp at his sides. In 3,000 years of conquest, nothing like this had ever happened. The Corvath had forgotten what it was like to be afraid. They were about to remember. Admiral Zixatheta stared at the empty space where 3 of his ships had been moments before. His purple eyes flickered with something the Corvath hadn't felt in generations. Fear. But fear quickly turned to rage. No primitive species could do this to the hegemony. It had to be some kind of trick. "All ships form attack pattern 7, he commanded. His voice echoed across the bridge. "Concentrate all fire on that human vessel. Overwhelm whatever defense they're using." The Corvath fleet moved with practiced precision. Ships that looked like massive crystals floating in space arranged themselves into a sphere around the Defiance. This was their ultimate attack formation. No ship had ever survived being at the center of it. On the Defiance, Captain Jack Morrison, watched the alien ships surrounding them. They're trying to box us in. Lisa, how many ships are we looking at? Commander Lisa Grant studied her tactical display. 80 ships have formed the sphere, Captain. The rest are holding back as reserves. She paused, then added, Jack, if they all fire at once, even our gravity shields might not hold. Jack nodded. He had expected this. Then we don't give them the chance. Sam, can you extend the gravity field? Lieutenant Sam Chen's fingers danced over his console. I can push it out another 500 meters, but it'll weaken the protection around us. Do it, and reverse the polarity on the ventral shields. Sam looked confused for a moment, then his eyes widened with understanding. Captain, that would create a gravity pulse. It could push us out of their trap while pulling them. Toward each other, Jack finished. Do it on my mark. The Corvath ships finished their formation. Admiral Zixatheta gave the order. Fire! 80 ships fired at once. The space around the Defiance turned white with energy. Plasma beams, particle weapons, and missiles all converged on the single human ship. Now, Sam! Jack shouted. Sam slammed, his hand on the console. The gravity field around the Defiance suddenly reversed and expanded. Instead of bending space inward, it pushed outward with tremendous force. The effect was immediate and chaotic. The Defiance shot upward like a cork, popping from a bottle, riding its own gravity wave. At the same time, the Corvath ships were pulled toward the center of their formation where the Defiance had been. 3 pairs of ships collided with each other, their shields failing under the impact. Others fired their emergency thrusters, trying to escape the sudden gravitational anomaly. Their carefully planned attack turned into chaos in seconds. Amy, target the damaged ships. Full spread of kinetic rounds. Jack ordered. Amy Rodriguez was already moving. Targets acquired, firing. 20 tungsten rods launched from the Defiance, each one accelerated to near light speed. The damaged Corvath ships, their shields already failing from the collisions, had no defense. 6 more ships vanished in brilliant flashes of light. But the Corvath were not without their own tricks. A group of smaller ships, fast attack corvettes, broke from the main fleet. They moved impossibly fast, their engines pushing them at accelerations that should have crushed any crew inside. Captain, 12 fast movers coming in from multiple vectors, Lisa reported. They're trying to get under our gravity shields. Jack watched the approaching ships. They were learning, adapting to human tactics. Good. That would make this more interesting. Ben, are you ready with that surprise we prepared? Lieutenant Ben Taylor grinned. The virus is ready, Captain. Just need them to get a little closer. The Corvath corvettes opened fire with rapid pulse lasers, thousands of shots per second. Most bent around the Defiance, but some found weak points in the gravity field. Alarms started sounding as hull impacts were registered. Minor damage to Section 7 and 12, someone reported. Return fire with point defense, Jack ordered. And Ben, upload the virus now. The Defiance's point defense guns, simple projectile weapons that most species considered obsolete, opened fire. They didn't need to be fancy. At close range, filling space with high-velocity metal was remarkably effective. But the real attack was invisible. Ben had spent weeks analyzing the Corvath communications during their approach to Earth. Their encryption was good, but humans had been breaking codes since World War II. The virus he uploaded was simple, but elegant. It didn't try to destroy their systems. It just made small changes to their navigation computers. 1 degree here, 2 degrees there. Tiny errors that grew larger over time. The first sign of trouble came when 2 corvettes, trying to execute the same evasive maneuver, turned into each other's path. They collided at high speed, shields sparking and failing. A moment later, a 3rd corvette fired its missiles at what its computer said was the Defiance. The missiles flew harmlessly into empty space, missing by kilometers. Admiral Zixatheta watched his tactical display in growing frustration. His ships were making mistakes, amateur errors that trained crews should never make. What is happening? He demanded. His operations officer was frantically checking systems. Admiral, we're detecting anomalies in our fleet network, some kind of contamination in our navigation systems. A virus? The Admiral's voice was incredulous. They're using computer viruses? That's beneath civilized warfare. But the humans didn't care what was considered civilized. They cared about winning. Captain Morrison watched as more Korvath ships started having problems. Some fired at ghosts, their targeting systems showing enemies that weren't there. Others found their engines firing at the wrong times, pushing them out of formation. "Captain," Amy called out, "I'm picking up something interesting. The Korvath flagship is isolated from the fleet network. They've cut themselves off to avoid the virus." Jack smiled. "Which means they can't coordinate with their fleet. Lisa, what's the status on our drone swarms?" "Ready to launch, Captain. 5,000 units, all armed and programmed." The Admiral had pulled his flagship back, trying to regain control of the situation. He didn't notice the small ports opening along the Defiance's hull. He didn't see the cloud of tiny objects emerging until it was too late. The drones were each no bigger than a car, painted black to blend with space. They had simple ion drives, basic navigation systems, and a single purpose: cause as much chaos as possible. They moved like a swarm of angry bees, accelerating at rates that would have killed any living pilot. 100 gravities, 200, 300. They danced between laser fire, too small and fast for most weapons to track. The first wave hit the Korvath destroyer Infinite Sorrow. 100 drones attached themselves to its hull like leeches. Then they exploded, not with massive force, but with carefully controlled electromagnetic pulses. The destroyer's lights flickered and died. Its weapons went silent. In seconds, a 5-kilometer warship was reduced to a floating tomb. More drones found targets. They went for weak points, sensor arrays, weapon ports, engine nozzles. They didn't need to destroy the ships, just cripple them. Admiral Zixatheta watched his fleet being taken apart piece by piece. 30 ships were now either destroyed or disabled. His perfectly organized fleet was in chaos, and still that single human ship sat there defying everything the Korvath knew about warfare. "Admiral," his tactical officer said quietly, "we've analyzed their weapons and tactics. They're not using anything we haven't seen before. Projectile weapons, gravity manipulation, cyber warfare, autonomous drones. These are all known technologies." "Then, why are we losing?" the Admiral snarled. The officer hesitated before answering. "Because they're using them in ways we never imagined. They're not fighting by the rules, sir. They're making their own rules." On the Defiance, Jack Morrison studied the tactical display. The Korvath fleet was hurt, but not beaten. They still had over 200 ships, and they were starting to adapt. Some had figured out how to clean the virus from their systems. Others were using area effect weapons to destroy drone swarms. "Captain," Sam Chen called out, "I'm detecting a massive energy buildup in the remaining Korvath fleet. They're preparing for something big." Jack nodded. He had been expecting this. When faced with an enemy that wouldn't fight fair, the Korvath would resort to overwhelming force. "Signal the longshot," he ordered. "Tell Captain Cooper it's time for the finale." 30 light minutes away, hidden in Jupiter's radiation shadow, Captain Steve Cooper received the message. His ship, the USS Longshot, had been waiting patiently. She had no armor, no shields, and only one weapon. But that weapon was about to change everything. "All hands, this is the captain," Steve announced. "We're about to fire humanity's answer to anyone who thinks they can take our world. Let's make it count." Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez watched her screens as thousands of drones moved through space like a deadly ballet. Each drone was marked as a tiny green dot on her display, and she controlled them all. It was like conducting an orchestra, except instead of music, she was creating destruction. "Second wave ready, Captain," she announced. "These ones are special." Jack Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Special how?" Amy's smile was sharp. "Remember how Sam said the Korvath use crystalline structures in their ships? Well, these drones carry nanites programmed to eat crystal. Once they start, they won't stop until there's nothing left." The Admiral Zix Theta was trying to restore order to his fleet. His ships were slowly recovering from the virus attack, and they had destroyed several hundred of the human drones. But something felt wrong. The humans were holding back. They had to be planning something. "Sensor officer, full scan of the surrounding space," he ordered. "Check every wavelength, every frequency. These humans are hiding something. The sensor officer worked his controls with all four arms. Admiral, I'm detecting more drones launching from the human ship, but these are different. They're smaller, much smaller. How much smaller? Each one is about the size of a ground vehicle, but they're carrying something. The mass readings don't make sense. The Admiral's purple eyes narrowed. Show me. On the main screen, enhanced images appeared of the new drones. They looked simpler than the first wave, just black boxes with engines. But the Admiral had learned not to underestimate human technology. Destroy them before they reach our ships, he commanded. The Corvath fleet opened fire with point defense lasers. Hundreds of drones exploded in brief flashes of light, but everyone destroyed. 3 more seemed to take its place. And these drones moved differently. They didn't attack in straight lines. They spiraled, curved, and danced through space in patterns that seemed almost alive. Amy Rodriguez was in her element. Swarm intelligence is online, Captain. They're learning from each other. Every drone that gets destroyed teaches the others what to avoid. It was another human innovation. Instead of programming each drone with complex instructions, they had given them simple rules and the ability to learn. The swarm was becoming smarter with every passing second. The first of the new drones reached a Corvath cruiser. It attached to the hull near an observation window. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the window began to cloud over. The crystal was changing, breaking down at the molecular level. Within seconds, the breakdown spread. The beautiful crystalline hull of the cruiser started to turn gray and crumble. The nanites were converting the ship's structure into more nanites, which spread even faster. By the void, the Admiral gasped as he watched the cruiser dissolve, like sugar in water. What abomination have they created? 3 more ships reported nanite infections. Their crews abandoned ship in escape pods as their vessels were consumed from the outside in. The Corvath had never seen anything like it. They had planet-destroying weapons, but this was different. This was slow, inexorable consumption. On the Defiance, Ben Taylor was monitoring Corvath communications. Captain, they're panicking. Half their fleet commanders are requesting permission to retreat. Jack shook his head. We can't let them retreat. If they get away, they'll come back with a bigger fleet. We need to end this here. He turned to his weapons officer. Amy, launch the 3rd wave. Everything we've got. Amy's fingers flew over. Her controls. 3rd wave launching. 5,000 units mixed payload. This wave was different. Some drones carried explosives. Others had drilling equipment to bore through hulls. Some released clouds of sensor-blocking particles. Others broadcast false signals to confuse targeting systems. It was chaos incarnated, delivered in small packages. The Corvath fleet tried to respond, but they were fighting on too many fronts. Ships infected with nanites were being abandoned. Others were blind from sensor interference. Some were firing at false targets while real drones slipped through their defenses. Lieutenant Sam Chen watched his engineering displays. Captain, gravity shields are holding, but we're taking some hits. Nothing serious yet, but if they concentrate fire again... Understood, Jack replied. He opened a channel to Earth. Control, this is Defiance. Request activation of Plan B. The response came immediately. Plan B authorized, Defiance. Good hunting. Miles away, hidden in the asteroid belt. 12 more. Human ships powered up their engines. They weren't warships, not really. They were mining vessels quickly converted for war, but they had one advantage. They were designed to break apart asteroids, and Corvath ships were made of crystal. Captain Maria Santos commanded the lead ship, the Rockbreaker. All ships, this is Santos. Time to show these aliens what asteroid miners can do. Attack pattern hammer and anvil. The mining ships weren't fast or heavily armed, but they had industrial-grade cutting lasers and magnetic grapples designed to catch tumbling rocks. Against traditional warships, they would have been useless. Against crystal ships already weakened by nanites, they were devastating. Admiral Zixatheta saw the new ships appearing on his sensors. More human vessels, where did they come from? They were hidden in the asteroid belt, Admiral, his sensor officer reported. They're "They're mining ships, sir." Under normal circumstances, the admiral would have laughed. Mining ships against warships? It was absurd. But nothing about this battle was normal. The rockbreaker targeted a Korvath destroyer that was already gray with nanite infection. The mining laser, designed to slice through solid rock, cut through the weakened crystal hull like it was paper. The destroyer split in half, venting atmosphere and crew into space. More mining ships joined the attack. They used their magnetic grapples to catch pieces of destroyed Korvath vessels and hurl them at intact ships. They released clouds of mining dust that clogged engine ports and blinded sensors. They fought dirty, without honor or grace, and they were winning. On the Defiance, Jack Morrison watched the battle with grim satisfaction. The Korvath fleet was down to half strength, but the Admiral's flagship and his elite guard remained untouched. They had pulled back, forming a defensive sphere that even the drones couldn't penetrate. "They're learning," Lisa Grant observed. "They figured out how to defend against our drones." Jack nodded. "Then it's time for something they can't defend against. Ben, send the signal to the long shot. Tell Steve to take the shot." Far away, Captain Steve Cooper received the message. The long shot had been charging her main weapon for the past hour. It was a weapon that shouldn't exist, something that human scientists had said was theoretically possible, but practically insane. They called it a stellar converter. It compressed hydrogen to the point where fusion began, then channeled that fusion reaction into a beam narrower than a pencil. For a brief moment, it would recreate the heart of a star. "Jenny, is the converter ready?" Steve asked his weapons officer. Lieutenant Jenny Clark checked her readings 3 times. "Ready, Captain, but we only get one shot. After this, the converter will be slag." Steve nodded. "Then we'd better make it count. Target the center of the Korvath formation. Fire on my mark." Back at the main battle, Admiral Zixus Theta was trying to rally his remaining forces. "All ships, form up on the Eternal Dominion. We'll make a fighting retreat to the edge of the system and call for reinforcements." It was a sound strategy. If they could escape and return with 1,000 ships, even these clever humans couldn't win. The Admiral was already composing his report, explaining how the humans had fought without honor, using banned weapons and tactics. He never saw the beam coming. The stellar converter fired from 30 light minutes away. The beam was invisible to most sensors, compressed beyond normal detection ranges. It traveled at the speed of light, crossing the vast distance in exactly 30 minutes. The timing was perfect, calculated down to the second. The beam struck the space between 3 Korvath ships. For a nanosecond, nothing happened. Then physics took over. The compressed hydrogen expanded explosively, undergoing fusion at a rate that shouldn't be possible outside a star's core. The temperature at the impact point reached 15 million degrees Celsius. Matter didn't just melt or vaporize, it underwent nuclear transformation. A new sun was born in the middle of the Korvath fleet. The 3 closest ships didn't have time to scream. They simply ceased to exist, converted to component atoms, and then to energy. Ships further away were hit by the radiation wave, their crews cooked instantly by gamma rays that penetrated all shielding. The Eternal Dominion, protected by its massive bulk and advanced shields, survived, but was crippled. Half its sensors were burned out. A third of its crew was dead or dying from radiation exposure. The beautiful crystal hull was cracked and blackened. When the light faded, when the sensors cleared, 60 more Korvath ships were gone. The heart had been ripped out of their fleet. Admiral Zixus Theta could not speak. His forearms hung limp at his sides as he stared at the devastation on his screens. Where 60 of his finest warships had been, there was now only an expanding cloud of superheated gas and debris. The impossible had happened. The Korvath hegemony was losing. Around him, his bridge crew was silent. Some were checking readings, unable to believe what they had seen. Others simply stared at the screens in shock. The Korvath had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had never lost a fleet engagement. They were supreme. They were dying. "Admiral," his communications officer whispered, What are your orders?" Zixus Theta tried to think, but his mind kept replaying the moment when that impossible beam had struck. A star. The humans had created a star in the middle of his fleet. How did one fight against a species that could make stars? On the Defiance, Captain Jack Morrison watched the aftermath of the stellar converter's strike. He felt no joy in the destruction, only grim necessity. These aliens had come to enslave Earth. They had to be stopped. Lisa, what's the status of the remaining Corvath ships? Commander Lisa Grant checked her displays. Approximately 120 ships still operational, Captain, but many are damaged. Their formation is completely broken. And our status? The Defiance has taken minor damage. Hull breaches in 3 sections already sealed. The mining ships report 2 losses. The Longshot. She paused. The Longshot's weapon is destroyed. They're running on emergency power. Jack nodded. The stellar converter had been a one-shot weapon. They had known that from the beginning. Tell Steve to fall back to Earth. They've done their part. Sam Chen looked up from his engineering console. Captain, I'm detecting something odd. The Corvath ships are powering up their engines, but they're not moving. What do you mean? They're channeling all their power somewhere, but I can't figure out where. Sam's eyes widened. Captain, they're linking their reactors. All of them. Jack felt his blood run cold. They're going to self-destruct. Take as many of us with them as they can. It was a desperate move, something no sane commander would consider. But Admiral Zixitheta was no longer entirely sane. The impossibility of defeat had broken something in his mind. If we cannot have this world, the Admiral muttered, his purple eyes blazing, then no one will have it. His science officer tried to object. Admiral, if we detonate all our reactors at once, the explosion could damage the human planet. The radiation alone could kill millions. Then they will learn the price of defying the hegemony, Zixitheta replied. On Earth, the Defense Command was tracking the situation. General Patricia Jones watched the energy readings from the Corvath fleet spike higher and higher. They're going to blow themselves up and take half our ships with them. Can we stop them? President Janet Mills asked over the video link. Not in time. The Defiance is too close. When those reactors blow, the general didn't need to finish. But Jack Morrison had not survived this long by giving up. Sam, can you create another gravity pulse, a big one? Captain, if I push the system that hard, it could fail completely. We'd lose all our shields. Can you do it? Sam's fingers were already moving over his console. Give me 30 seconds. Amy, I need every remaining drone to hit the Corvath flagship. I don't care if they make it through, just distract them. Amy launched everything they had left. 3,000 drones streaked toward the Eternal Dominion. Most would be destroyed before they reached it, but that wasn't the point. Admiral, Six Theta saw the incoming drones and sneered. Destroy them. It won't matter. In 60 seconds, we all die together. The countdown had begun. Across the Corvath fleet, reactors were pushed beyond their limits. Containment fields strained. In 60 seconds, they would fail simultaneously, creating an explosion that would be visible from Earth's moon. 20 seconds, Captain, Sam reported, sweat running down his face. Jack opened a channel to all human ships. All vessels prepare for emergency burn. When I give the signal, full power away from the Corvath fleet. Captain, Ben Taylor said, urgently, I'm picking up something else. More ships dropping out of hyperspace. Jack's heart sank. Corvath reinforcements? Now? But the ships that appeared weren't Corvath. They were a hodgepodge of different designs, different sizes, different technologies. A voice crackled over the communication system. Human vessel, this is Captain Violin of the Free Worlds Alliance. We've been monitoring your battle. The Corvath have oppressed us for centuries. Today we stand with Earth. 20 ships had arrived. They weren't warships, mostly converted freighters and mining vessels from worlds the Corvath had conquered. But they immediately opened fire on the Corvath fleet with everything they had. Admiral Zixitheta screamed in rage. Slaves, you dare raise arms against your masters? The distraction was all Sam needed. Gravity pulse ready, Captain. All ships emergency burn now. Sam, hit it. The Defiance's gravity generator released every bit of stored energy at once. Space itself seemed to ripple outward from the human ship. The wave hit the Korvath fleet like a tsunami. Ships were flung in all directions, their careful reactor synchronization shattered. Some reactors overloaded early, destroying individual ships. Others shut down automatically, their safety systems finally kicking in. The coordinated self-destruct became a chaotic series of random explosions. The Eternal Dominion, already damaged, couldn't compensate for the sudden gravitational shift. It tumbled end over end, its admiral thrown from his command chair. By the time Zixatheta regained his footing, the moment had passed. The self-destruct had failed, but the Defiance had paid a price. With the gravity shields down, they were vulnerable. A dozen Korvath ships, still functional, immediately opened fire. Plasma beams struck the human ship's hull, burning through armor and into internal compartments. "Hull breaches, multiple decks," someone shouted. "We've lost forward weapons control." "Emergency. Power to standard shields," Jack ordered. "Return fire with everything we've got." The battle dissolved into a brutal close-range firefight. Ships exchanged fire at distances where missing was impossible. The mining ships, led by the Rockbreaker, charged into the fight with their cutting lasers blazing. The free world ships, despite their inferior weapons, fought with the fury of people who had been slaves for too long. Captain Maria Santos of the Rockbreaker personally led her ship on a ramming attack against a Korvath destroyer. "For Earth, for freedom," she shouted as the reinforced mining prow of her ship punched through the crystal hull. The destroyer cracked like an egg, but the Rockbreaker's engines were destroyed in the impact. Both ships tumbled away, locked together in a death spiral. Cow. The Defiance. Damage reports were coming in faster than the crew could respond. Port engines offline, Deck 7 venting atmosphere, medical bay reporting 30 casualties. Jack gripped his command chair as another impact shook the ship. They were hurt, maybe dying, but they were still fighting. "Target their flagship. If we're going down, we're taking the Admiral with us." Amy managed to get 2 railguns working. The tungsten rods launched toward the Eternal Dominion, but the massive ship's shields, though weakened, still functioned. The rods exploded against the barrier in brilliant flashes. Then something unexpected happened. One of the free world ships, a small freighter that had no business in a battle, accelerated to full speed directly at the Eternal Dominion. Its captain, a creature with scales and 4 eyes who had once served on a Korvath ship, broadcast on all frequencies. "I am Sivan Kool. My world was destroyed by the Korvath, my family enslaved. Today I reclaim our honor." The freighter was carrying mining explosives, tons of them. It struck the Eternal Dominion's weakened shields and detonated. The explosion tore through the flagship's port side, opening it to space. Admiral Zixatheta watched his bridge decompress, his crew being sucked into the void. He managed to grab his command chair, his 4 arms straining to hold on. Through the breach he could see the human ship, damaged and burning but still fighting, still defying the natural order. The emergency bulkhead slammed shut, saving what was left of the bridge. The Admiral slumped in his chair, finally understanding. The humans didn't fight like warriors. They fought like survivors, like creatures who had clawed their way up from nothing and would do anything to keep what they had earned. "Admiral," his communications officer gasped, one of the few bridge crew still alive. "The fleet. What's left of it?" "They're requesting orders." Zixatheta looked at his tactical display. Of 300 ships, fewer than 40 remained operational. The Eternal Dominion was crippled beyond repair. The Korvath hegemony's greatest fleet had been destroyed by primitives who refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. "Order all remaining ships to retreat," he said quietly. "We have lost." The retreat of the Korvath fleet was not orderly. It was not dignified. Ships fled in whatever direction their damaged engines could take them, leaving trails of crystalline debris and vented atmosphere. The mighty hegemony that had ruled for 3,000 years ran like frightened children from a single human battleship and a collection of converted mining vessels. Admiral Zixatheta sat in what remained of his bridge, watching his empire crumble. Only 6 of his officers had survived the decompression. The Eternal Dominion's engines were dead. Life support was failing. They were trapped in Earth's orbit, dependent on the mercy of the very species they had come to conquer. "Admiral," his communications officer said weakly, "the human ship is approaching. They're offering assistance." Zix Theta's purple eyes flickered with disbelief. "Assistance? We came to enslave them, and they offer assistance?" On the Defiance, Captain Jack Morrison stood despite his injuries. A piece of shrapnel had caught him in the shoulder during the last exchange of fire, but he refused to leave the bridge. Blood seeped through the temporary bandage as he watched the crippled Corvath flagship on the screen. "Captain, are you sure about this?" Lisa Grant asked. Her face was covered in soot from an electrical fire, and her left arm was in a sling. "They're beaten, Lisa. Killing them now would just be murder." Jack activated the communication system. "Admiral Zix Theta, this is Captain Morrison. Your ship is dying. Let us evacuate your wounded." The response took a moment to come. When the Admiral's face appeared on the screen, Jack saw a broken being. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been respect. "Why?" Zix Theta asked simply. "Because that's what separates us from you," Jack replied. "We know when to stop fighting. We know that today's enemy might be tomorrow's ally, and we know that mercy can be stronger than any weapon." The evacuation took 3 hours. Human medical teams boarded the Eternal Dominion, treating Corvath wounded without distinction. They saved lives that hours before had been trying to kill them. It was this, more than the military defeat that would spread through the galaxy in the coming months. As the Admiral was transferred to a human medical ship, he stopped beside Jack Morrison. They stood face to face, conqueror and defender. Neither quite sure what to say. "Your species is insane," Zix Theta finally said. "You fight without honor, without rules. You use weapons that should not exist, and then you save your enemies." Jack smiled tiredly. "We're not insane, Admiral. We're human. We've been practicing war on each other for thousands of years. We've gotten very good at it. But we've also learned that winning the war is easy. Winning the peace is what matters. The hegemony will not forget this defeat. Others will come. Let them come," Jack said. "We'll be ready. But Admiral, take a message back to your hegemony. Earth stands ready to defend herself and her allies, but we'd rather trade than fight. We'd rather build than destroy. The choice is yours." 3 days later, the surviving Corvath ships were repaired enough to make the journey home. They left with their wounded, their pride shattered, but their lives intact. The news of their defeat spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. On Earth, the victory celebrations were muted. Too many had died. The Rockbreaker and 2 other mining ships had been destroyed. The Defiance would need months of repairs. But they had won. David had defeated Goliath, and the universe would never be the same. President Janet Mills addressed the United Earth Assembly. "Today, we've shown the galaxy that Earth will not kneel to anyone, but we've also shown that we're not conquerors. We fought to defend our freedom, not to take others. Now we must prepare for what comes next." Defense Secretary Tom Bradley presented the new plans. The Defiance was our prototype. She proved that human innovation can overcome superior numbers and technology. Our shipyards are already building her sisters. Within 6 months, we'll have 10 battleships. Within 2 years, a full fleet. "What about the Free Worlds Alliance?" someone asked. "The ships that came to help us?" Jack Morrison, his arm still in a sling, stood to answer. "Captain Violin and his people risked everything to stand with us. I propose we offer them a formal alliance. Mutual defense, technology, sharing, trade agreements. Show the galaxy that friendship with Earth has benefits." The proposal passed unanimously. In the depths of space, aboard a Corvath medical transport, Admiral Zix Theta reviewed the battle recordings for the 100th time. He watched the Defiance's gravity shields deflect impossible amounts of firepower. He saw the railguns turn his ships into expanding clouds of gas. He observed the drone swarms learning and adapting in real time. And he saw the stellar converter create a star where none should exist. "Sir," his aide approached hesitantly, "the Hegemony Council demands your report." Zix Theta turned off the display. Tell them the truth. Tell them we encountered a species that doesn't fight by our rules because they've been writing their own rules for millennia. Tell them the humans have turned war into a science and peace into an art. And tell them that if we're wise, we'll never give them a reason to leave their world in force. Sir? Think about it. They defeated our grand fleet with one true warship and a collection of mining vessels. What happens when they build 100 warships, 1,000? What happens when they decide that the best defense is eliminating threats before they arise? The aid's scales paled. They could conquer the galaxy. They could. But they won't. Not unless we force them to. That's what makes them truly dangerous. They have the power to destroy but choose to build. They have the strength to conquer but choose to defend. They are chaos and order, destruction and creation, merged into one species. 6 months passed. The galaxy watched Earth with a mixture of fear and fascination. Some species sent ambassadors, hoping to establish trade. Others sent spies trying to steal human technology. All found the same thing. Humans were eager to share knowledge, but the moment anyone threatened them or their allies, they became something else entirely. The Zephrani Empire decided to test Earth's resolve. They sent a fleet of 50 ships to raid Earth's new colony on Mars. They never made it past Jupiter. The humans had seeded the entire solar system with automated defense platforms, each one armed with railguns and gravity mines. The Zephrani fleet was torn apart before a single human ship had to fire. The message was clear: Earth's space was off limits unless you came in peace. Captain Jack Morrison, promoted to admiral, stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute, the Defiance's sister ship. Around him, 9 more battleships held formation. Each one was more advanced than the last, incorporating lessons learned from the Corvath battle. Admiral, Commander Lisa Grant reported, now captain of her own ship. We're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They're officially recognizing Earth as a sovereign power and offering us a seat on the council. Jack smiled. Tell them we accept, but on our terms. Earth stands with any species that seeks freedom. We'll defend the weak, trade with the willing, and destroy anyone who tries to enslave others. That might make us enemies, sir. Then we'll have enemies, but we'll also have friends, and we'll show the galaxy that there's a different way. Not rule through fear, but partnership through respect. A year after the battle, Admiral Zixha Theta returned to Earth space. This time, he came in a single ship, unarmed, broadcasting peace on all frequencies. Jack Morrison met him at the neutral station humans had built at the edge of their system. Admiral, Jack greeted him. I wasn't expecting to see you again. I came to warn you, Zixha Theta said. The hegemony is split. Some want revenge, others want to leave Earth alone. But there are other powers out there, older and stronger than the Corvath. They've noticed you now. Let them come, Jack said. We'll be ready. You can't fight the entire galaxy. We don't want to fight anyone, but we will if we have to. That's what your people never understood, Admiral. Humans don't want war. We're just very, very good at it when it's forced upon us. Zixha Theta studied the human before him. You could conquer the galaxy if you wished. Probably, Jack agreed. But conquest is easy. Building something that lasts, something that brings species together instead of crushing them under your boot, that's hard. That's what humanity offers. Not an empire, but a choice. And if species choose wrongly, Jack's expression hardened, then they'll learn what the Corvath learned. Earth's children don't kneel. We don't surrender, and we never ever give up. As Zixha Theta departed, he carried with him a message for the galaxy. The humans were here to stay. They could be your greatest ally or your worst nightmare. The choice was yours. On Earth, children looked up at the stars with new eyes. They weren't lights in the sky anymore. They were destinations, possibilities, futures waiting to be claimed. Humanity had announced itself to the cosmos with fire and thunder, showing that they were unchallenged until a Terran battleship entered the battlefield. And this was just the beginning. Chief Engineer Sandra Kim stood before the Earth Defense Council, presenting her latest designs. The Defiance-class battleships were just the start. I present to you Project Titan, ships that exist partially in hyperspace, weapons that fire through 11 dimensions, and shields that draw power from dark energy itself. How long? President Mills asked. 5 years for the first prototype, 10 years for a full fleet. And if someone